Pick up your gear and open your chests. Throw on your armor and head out on a quest. Hey, hey, it's a brand new day. On the Sword Coast, your allies will help with blazing bows and magic as well. Hey, hey, heroes on their way. Fighting forever against overwhelming odds. Fighting together in favor of multiple gods. Idle champions of the Forgotten Realms. Idle champions, adventure never ends. Idle champions, get you all out there. Idle champions, you will set again. Idle champion. From Waterdeep to Icewind, head out the Shove or Shadowfell, hey, hey. Together we stay. Walk to the monsters, walk to the boss, walk to the right, it's never a loss, hey, hey. Bad guys to slay. Fighting forever against overwhelming odds. Fighting together in favor of multiple gods. Idle champions of the Forgotten Realms. Idle champions, adventure never ends. Idle champions, get you all out there. Idle champions, you will set again. Idle champions.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another Saturday edition of Gaarawarr's Guide, the tutorial show. So unlike GG2E on Fridays, this is not just primarily Q&A. This is me talking about a topic, and today's topic... Don't let anybody know. See any CNE people watching? We're going to talk about click debuff today. I think... At some point, they might shut the stream off because they don't want people to know about this. But who knows? Hey, if they're going to let me talk about it, at least attempt to talk about it, we're going to attempt to talk about it until they kill us. So, if the stream shuts off, blame Justin and David. I don't know. It's a bit, folks. We're fine, probably. Maybe. Ooh. I have a lot to talk about today, and this is not my usual wheelhouse. So let's throw out some names. First off, we have Jay on the CNE Games account today. So say hello to Jay. Jay's filling in for Martin. We have me. Hi, I'm Gaarawarr. Did I say that yet? It's the weekend, folks. I don't have to remember who I am or what I've said, do I? And the click debuff meta is kind of a total of lots of conversations that different people have had. I think the very first mention I ever saw of one of the core tenets of the click debuff meta was, shocker, from Silisa, probably a couple of years ago. But no one really jumped on to the click debuff train until shortly after A Tale of Two Champions came around, which is a variant that some know and love, or hate, that arrived, a while ago. And all these conversations happened, and then Cyrus Dane on Reddit and Discord. Cyrus Dane is the person who compiled all this information up into a guide. So this is not a Gaarawarr. I mean, this is Gaarawarr's guide to the click debuff meta. I am explaining this to you, but I am giving full credit where credit is due. This was based off information compiled by Cyrus Dane, and back when I first attempted and tried it out, you know, I chatted with them via messages and got it all nailed out. We did some stuff on stream, and tested it out for people to see, and now here we are back, not on my channel, but on the official CNA Games channel, talking click debuff meta. So if I leave anything out, or if if I don't get all of the little details, it's because this is not necessarily something that I run myself to do all over and over again. There are people who do this a lot. Yeah, as you can see from the code, one of the reasons some people stay away is it creates a lot of lag. It creates a lot of lag for your game because, hey, guess what, folks? The click debuff meta, it has got debuff in the title. That means we're going to be stacking lots and lots of debuffs, and whenever we do that in the game, that creates lots and lots of math. And this game is built on like a Unity framework, and that's not really. It wasn't designed to make idle click games with tons and tons of math like this, so it's trying real hard, folks. It's trying real hard. I do not have a click debuff team in it, and yet we're going to talk about some of the tenets and stuff, and then if you have questions, we will do that in the second half of the show. I don't know how long this is going to take, so the Q&A section may be shorter or longer, depending on how much we go over here. If you were watching the show yesterday, this formation and run may look familiar. I started this and I was doing a deep run yesterday just to see what my Ashara could push up to, and I think we got to like in the 700s or 800s. And then I switched over to a click debuff, and I pushed into the, almost up to 1,000, and then I stopped. I switched it back here. If you'll notice, we're just getting steamrolled, folks. That's because I did not get here with a pushing formation. I got here with a click debuff formation, and we're gonna switch in and talk about that kind of stuff. So if you have questions, you can throw them in the chat. Jay will grab them and put them in a document. We'll get to them in the second half of the show. So let us dive in just while this is doing its thing. So as I kind of briefly mentioned before, the foundation of click meta, of the click debuff meta, really rides this kind of backbone of the idea and fact that click damage in this game, and upgrading your click damage, currently scales infinitely. It is a straightforward scaling. Every time you put a level in your click damage, the damage goes up a specific percent, and it just continues. And as long as you've got gold to put in it, it's going to keep going up at that same amount. So there is no, unlike champions, there's no kind of artificial soft cap that creates a damage plateau. Right, so like with champions, you upgrade them and you upgrade them and you upgrade them, and they get lots and lots of cool damage upgrades for 300, 200, 500, 1,000 different kinds of upgrades depending on the champion. But eventually you get to soft cap, which you see at the bottom here. My champions have no further upgrades. You can still throw a little bit of gold in towards them to give them an individual level. Which I can do right here. Like we can switch it. I can switch it over to X1, and it will continue to level up individually, which will grant my champion a little more damage. But it no longer scales. Their damage scaling is no longer the same or as strong as it was with actual upgrades. So this kind of creates a damage plateau. So you're going up, and then their damage kind of plateaus, and there's like a small creep, but it's not a whole lot, but you still usually ride that to push as far as you can. Now, with click debuffs, with click damage, again, there's no damage plateau, so you are getting the same amount for your gold that you got from the beginning. You're just upgrading and upgrading. The thing is the cost to do this goes up exorbitantly. Let's go over here and take a look. So you can see my click damage is at level 800. And the damage is now at E245 per click. Well, if you look at my bud, Ashara is at E219, right? This is why we're not really getting very far. Let me max out Ashara. There we go. E220. Now, I've spent the equivalent amount of gold. I've spent gold in the E189 range on Ashara now. And I'm still only getting like E220 damage, where the equivalent gold over here is getting me E245, right? So there is a point once you've gone well past the soft cap of champions, and you have lots of favor to get you there, that click damage starts scaling you much, much better. And that's where the click debuff meta lives. So, how much favor are we talking about? Man, as with so many things in this game, it depends. Testing in the community has stated that some people think they can start it like in an event around E25. That's a lot. That's, this is not a new player. This is not a new player thing. This is very much mid to end game. So getting into the E25 range with just pushing formations in an event. But remember, if you are, as with anything in this game, the more the more champions you're missing for this type of setup, the more favor you're going to have to cover whatever you're missing. This is a meta specifically around debuffs. That means we specifically want champions that debuff for all incoming damage, or champions that support that and help that happen. We're also going to want a really beefy tank, and it's great if we can combine a beefy tank. If that said beefy tank has debuffs, right? So the fewer of these types of champs you have, the more favor you're going to have to overcome that. And you're not going to really probably push as far. It's going to be rougher for you, right? So this is very much I have a deep bench of debuffers, and people that help to spread those debuffs, and I'm using them to do this with, right? If you have like all those super optimal debuffers and they're well geared out, and you know how to put them in and use them, you might be able to start this around E25. Generally speaking, we used to say you're going to want in the mid E30s, but we've had some additional debuffers come to the game, like Orkira. Elliewick actually helps a little bit in this and can be somewhat useful depending on what cards you draw. Again, it's kind of up in the air. But we'll get into all that in a moment. So as I stated before, this is a very lag heavy. This can be a very lag heavy thing because it's all about stacking debuffs and then triggering those debuffs and causing lots of things to die. So on some platforms, not only could this potentially lag you out, it might just crash your client completely. So it's definitely not for everyone, because this was never an intended way for you to push deep through things. The developers have stated before that their intention for click damage was simply to get you through some of the early levels faster, but the game is about pushing with a formation. So while we're getting to do this tutorial today, at least until we're still going, until they shut us off, we're talking about a playstyle that was not intended, and that is not actually actively supported. So I wouldn't expect, and to a certain extent, they may be looking to change it. So if you're going to try it, know that this may be something that changes in the future. As you all know, or as you should know by now, events have a better health scaling. Like the health doesn't scale up as quickly, so you can kill it easier and progress easier. So events are the best place to really try your first click debuff run. Also events, all the current event formations or formation layouts have 10 champions in them. So the more champions you can have, the more potential debuffers or spreaders that you can have, and thus the easier this is. I am kind of doing this hard mode in Sword Coast, mainly because I want to show you that it's possible anywhere. I didn't necessarily pick an optimal adventure. Usually you want to make sure that you don't have like ranged bosses, and I didn't even check. I just dove into this one. You definitely don't want to do this, You can do it against armored bosses, but it's much harder. As you know, to remove an armor segment requires damage above a specific threshold. That threshold is the total health of that enemy divided by the number of segments they have. So that's problematic for click debuff, because sometimes click debuff is about just one burst damage after lots of things have built up, or slowly whittling through someone a little bit at a time. And it's not necessarily super high damage. Plus, this is about clicking. There's click in the title too. And clicks can only take one armor or segment of health off every 6 seconds. So it does take a lot longer. Even if you do have the damage, it does take a while to click through all of that, if you can even do it. So generally speaking, you want to avoid those things. Because this is in-game, this means we're stacking lots of different knowledge on top of lots of different knowledge. One of the things you're going to need to know how to do and be good at is Azaka farming. So if you have not learned how to Azaka farm, you're going to want to do that. If you don't have Azaka at all, you're probably not ready for click debuff, but hey, this is something to look forward to in the future. Azaka farming is how you help to, earn more gold every so often. Hopefully every, potentially every 5 levels, you might have to stop in Azaka farm to earn enough gold to upgrade your click damage enough to get you to the next boss. So keep in mind this can be a very slow, methodical push that requires lots of active changing up of formation and potentially changing specializations, whether you use specialization potions to do that, or whether you do that thing. I mean, we're just going all in, folks. We're talking about things that maybe they don't necessarily want to talk about. Where you do the thing where you just pull a champion into a background party and then bring them back again, and hey, boom, you get to choose their specialization again. Whatever way you do that, I use specialization potions because I've got tons of them. Whatever way you do that, you may have to do that quite a bit during this, maybe every 5 levels, right? Where can this get you? Right? Like, can this get you through difficult variants? Maybe. Probably not. Usually variant, there may be some out there you might be able to get through with click debuff. The issue is usually the difficult variants are restricting you on your on the champions you can use. And you just may not have enough debuffers that you need to make this happen. You might. It's always something you can try, but generally speaking, this is for pushing to grab some achievements, like the achievements for, getting to level 700, 800, 900, 1,000, right? 1,000 is the last one currently. Grabbing some of those gold achievements, like those total gold earned achievements. These are things that can do that for you. But it's not necessarily something that you're using to progress through variants. The one notable exception I mentioned earlier, a click debuff is the only way currently, unless you have just outrageous amounts of favor and overlevel your champions to an incredible amount. It's the only way to get through A Tale of Two Champions. The variant, the adventure, A Tale of Two Champions, or variant. No, it's a variant, A Tale of Two Champions. It literally only lets you use 2 champions. And early on, you use lots of gold farming champions, and then you switch to click through everything, and then you switch to a pair of debuff champions, and you click debuff your way to the end. And this is kind of what triggered the usage of click debuff, and the real hard look at click debuff by a lot of people in the community. Again, it wasn't the first time it came up. It's just the first time people really started caring about it. What else do I have to... Okay, yeah, I think that's the general... stuff. So we're going to talk about what I have termed like the difference debuffers and spreaders. We'll talk about what a spreader is. It's a specific reference to freely. We're going to talk about how to boost the survivability of your tank sometimes if you need just a little bit of a boost. Oh, and one tip, I did say you kind of want to do this, it's kind of a thing that is not great because you're usually doing stacking lots of debuffs, and there's usually a lot of traitor procs from Krull, and we'll get into that here in a moment when we start talking about each of the specific debuffs. This is an AoE effect that goes off to a small area. If you have a lot of ranged enemies, you're going to have to clear any melee and then do ranged. But if you have a ranged boss and melee trash mobs, you may end up with the boss all alone, and then you can't kill it. You have to find a way before you do this to move the boss up closer to the ranged enemies, and there are a couple champions that do this. We just got one added to the game in Prudence. Prudence's ult is the same as Warden. They both have the same ult, so they can both do this. They can both create this effect that pulls all the champions up closer to, all the enemies up closer to the champion formation, and that includes ranged enemies and ranged bosses, as long as they're not fixed in place. This is not something you'd want to do against things that are fixed in place, generally. Lazaps also has a pull that happens, a pull effect that happens on occasion. So pulling things closer to you if they're ranged, if you have a ranged bosses, that's something you need to be ready to do. So something that you're going to want to have kind of in your pocket is one of those champions when you're prepping to do this, or you're just going to get stuck if you hit one of those. Okay, so let's talk debuffers. Obviously, you've seen I'm just dying over and over and over again. The strength of Ayla. Ayla is one of the strongest tanks in the game, in my opinion, the strongest. People's opinions vary. But even she can't sit here and tank 100 enemies for too long before getting just wiped out, right? So let's take everything off the field. Let's go back to level 1. And let's start looking at different champions in different slots. So we're going to get rid of people here who are not. Now, I'm dragging Regis off, and some people might be going, but Regis has a debuff. And I want to be very clear about something. Regis debuffs a damage type. So when we're looking at Ruby weakness, it says increases the damage of enemies when taken by certain types of attacks, either melee attacks, magic attacks, or ranged attacks. Click damage doesn't fall under any of these. So Regis, not viable for this. I'm going to leave these 4 out because all 4 of these champions are actually viable for this. So we'll start with them. First off, in the front, we have Ayla. Again, I said Ayla is a super strong tank. Why is she super strong tank? Well, look at that shield, right? Ayla has a self-proccing shield. Ayla don't need nobody else to protect her. Ayla protects herself and looks good while doing it. She procs a shield based on that is a percentage of her health based on the number of enemies that she has electrified. So the larger the enemy stat gets, the bigger her shield can get. The max is 100 enemies, and the max for her shield is 1,000% of her health. That's a lot, folks. Calliope is a shielder I talk about a lot and that I love. Calliope's shield caps at 200% of a champion's health if you can get it that high. So having Ayla's self-shield up to potentially 1,000% of her health, kind of a big deal. But we don't just have Ayla in because she has great shielding. This Storm Soul effect is kind of the key. This is the debuff. So when Ayla attacks a primed enemy, they're stunned and electrified, increasing the damage they take from all champions. But the thing is they take extra damage from click damage too. So if it says that, generally you want to find a debuff ability that says it takes more damage, period. However, in some cases, if it says it takes more damage from all champions, that's going to work as well, and you kind of have to test when a champion comes out to see if it works or not. But like I said, Regis definitely out because his debuff is very specific about certain types of attacks for champions and not about anything else. So this is what we want Ayla in for. We want Ayla in for super strong shields and for that debuff. That means when we come over here and we're looking to stat her out with feats, we want something that buffs real strong on the debuffs, which that would be the biggest. But there is, if you don't have Storm Warden, you're going to go for health. So the 30% health, which is what I want here. And then if you don't have anything else, the 15% health. Now you could go 30% health and 10 overwhelm. Try it out. I tend to just stack lots of health because I just want as big a shield as possible. And I don't find, when you get to the high levels of this game, I don't find that overwhelm, getting from 25 to 35 overwhelm, I don't find that to be super helpful, but to each their own. Try it out. Let me know if you get better results. So this is kind of how you're going to want to set up Ayla for this. Let's look. Let's jump back now. Everything else is kind of, it just depends. It just depends on who you have. So slot 1, you're going to want to look for debuffers. Now, Sisaspia has a weird thing that gets referred to as a debuff, but it's like a dot. Yeah, don't go there, folks. If you're looking at slot 1, you just want Orkira. Orkira's debuff is based on elemental fire, where they receive additional damage from all attacks. This does include click damage as attacks, and it does stack. There's a whole Orkira stacking thing that for healing that has to happen for you to do this. I just did this yesterday on GG2E, but I'm going to refresh it here real quickly. Again, this is going to require a bunch of different champions. And effectively, I did save this formation. Haha! Gaarawarr was prepared. This is kind of an Orkira, we can call it Orkira stacking formation. When you're going to do this, we're going to ramp up and maximize the amount of healing that's going to happen. And we use these feats to do so. And then we are going to set up a formation that has both Archon and Artemis in it. And we set up Archon next to Orkira because then he doesn't get a heal. We're going to use his Usurp. We're going to set up Artemis kind of in the middle. And Archon is going to Usurp off Artemis, but Artemis is going to Observe off Archon, thus ending up with a larger healing. We use Narak to buff Githzerai Focus, buffs abilities based on their Wisdom score if they qualify, and so Narak is going to be buffing Orkira's heals. Alcoria is in here. Their Watchful Order helps to buff positional formation abilities, which the healing is. So that's upping the healing again. And then we're surrounding Artemis with DPS. So we've got him in his friendly spec, or friends, or whatever it's called, where he basically gets a bonus to his observe for the DPS that are around him. And we're using magic-based attackers, so their base attack is magic, for Alcoria's Watchful Order. This creates a situation where normally Orkira was healing for EO4 heals, and now Artemis is receiving an E16 heal, right? So we use this to build up this Healing Flame right here, as high as we can get it. Now, if I wanted to wait a long time, I could probably get it to E18, but it's going real slow. Now, if we were on a 10-person formation, you could easily get this higher, right? Because you'd have a whole other person in here that you could use to potentially manipulate the healing done. And that means we have a very strong debuff now with Elemental Fire. And we can now, because I already did this before, I don't have to do it again, I was just demonstrating. I can go back to the actual Elemental Fire and Healing Flame things, and now we look that we have a very strong debuff in Elemental Fire. And I can go back to a pushing formation. I can take all of these out, and I can start rebuilding my debuffing formation. So again, we have Ayla in the front. I've got Orkira in the back. As you can see, the base heals from Orkira were that EO4, because that's what's getting topped off on, well, a low chunk, but EO4 onto that. We don't really have any debuffers that are going to help us out a whole lot here, but we are going to bring Talon to prep it, because Talon's going to be a solid spreader for us when we get to Freely. In fact, let's just go talk about the luckiest boy. Let me put Freely in his regular, as much as I hate to do it, because I like the pirate skins. Here's Freely in his regular skin. It doesn't really matter where we put these people, because again, we're not building a viable pushing formation. We're just debuffing the heck out of things. So, Freely's lucky boy What we're looking at here is what I commonly mispronounce as the Yuck of Londala, and it's the Luck of Yondala. So, Opportunity Cornucopia. The target takes 100% more damage per application. The total effect is increased by an amount, right? And this stacks multiplicatively. So Luck of Yondala is basically something that freely and other people that you have chosen via the specialization to give the Luck of Yondala to apply to targets, and they can apply multiple stacks. So what we want to do is we want to build out our formation with debuffers and spreaders. And the spreaders are people who spread Freely's buff to as many things as possible, and thus potentially apply as many stacks as possible. There is no visual way to tell how many stacks of Luck of Yondala anything has. All you can tell is if it is applied. So if you see the cornucopia show up, that means it's there. The other big part of this, though, and I'm not going to leave this out, is requisition, which is the fruit that shows up. It's like grapes. This makes the target drop more gold. Again, gold find is a big deal here. Gold find is a big deal here. So if we can pick up more gold as we're pushing through, that's fantastic, right? So we're going to throw in freely, and we're going to start looking, once we get our debuffers in, can we find... we're going to fill all our extra spaces in with people who are going to spread the Luck of Yondala with however we've set it. You do have some freedom to set it in different ways, so keep that in mind. Slot 3, I'm going to go with Gromma. Everybody knows I love Gromma. Gromma has a, in her Arctic, here we go, Circle of the Arctic spec. She has at 200 the ability Freezing Breeze. So the Arctic spec turns her, gives her Sleet Storm when she attacks. This targets the enemy and nearby enemies. They're slowed by half and their attack timer is doubled. That's great. We want less damage on our tank, so this is a survivability feature. But Freezing Breeze then makes everything hit by Sleet Storm take additional damage. So that's what we've got Gromma in for. Now again, for feats, I have this because I was pushing with Gromma. But right now we want to support our tank. So we can swap into, because there's nothing that specifically affects Freezing Breeze. We're going to swap into health so that our tank, Ayla, is as beefy as possible. Coming up here to slot 4. Notable mentions here. We're going to say Jarlaxle. Clearly, we're going to want Jarlaxle for Azaka farms. This is your core champion, not a big deal. Sentry could, if you're down on debuffers and spreaders, Sentry could potentially be someone you bring in to help a little bit. But the big help they're going to provide is if you're going to use them. Just be aware what you're talking about here. Let me get the name right. The Aroas Synergy ability, which is going to contribute to the overall Aroas Synergy pool, which is something that Ayla dips into as one of the heroes of Aroas, and that's going to make Ayla's debuff better. If we come up here, electrified enemies take additional damage equal to 25% of the total Aroas Synergy pool. So that is another way Sentry can be useful in increasing your Ayla's debuff, if that's all you have available. But generally speaking, not necessarily somebody you're going to go directly for. Over here, I'm going to slot in Briv, because Briv, generally speaking, I tend to run Chaotic for freely for this, because Talon then can be a spreader. Briv could potentially come in and be a spreader, and also health share for the tank. So we're going to keep Briv in our back pocket. We're going to look for other debuffers. Well, if we're in slot 6 and we're looking at debuffers, I mean, come on. There's only one name to go to, and that's Crawl. And you're going to want both Virulent Strain feats if you have them. If you don't, slot what you have. And then in the other slot, go for Pilfer or some kind of gold find. And in fact, when we're choosing our specialization here, you want to choose Pilfer, because gold is a big deal. And in this situation, we're going to be building lots and lots and lots, potentially lots and lots and lots of stacks. And we need to make that gold as much as possible, especially when we stop to Azaka farm. So gold is a priority because we want to keep scaling our click damage. So make sure you're targeting that priority. First, Virulent Strain. If you can't do both Virulent Strain, go for gold, and then make sure the spec is gold for Crawl. We already have Freely in. Coming over here, my preferred choice here is Beetle and Grimm. Now, we don't want Beetle in. We want Grimm, but there's this whole long rest thing that can give you lots of stacks. So I currently have just an outrageous amount of stacks. We're going to let that keep going. Well, those are wearing down. I want to build as many stacks for Grimm as I can. But the situation is, because this is so slow, you're going to end up swapping back and forth between them to build stacks, because Grimm has a nice, what I refer to as the beer debuff, because it's a mug. It's an empty glass mug, and it fills up with beer as you get more stacks. So that's what we're going to want to do. So I'm going to put them in there and be ready to swap. We have a couple options here. Now, again, Havilar is a good spreader. She's chaotic, so she's a good spreader for Freely. She's also a tank, so she can boost up Ayla. Ayla's overall health. But we now have Elliewick here as well. Elliewick, if you get the right cards, which I did not in this run, so we won't be using her. But if you get the right cards from the deck of many things, you can see I get nothing for some reason. What you're looking for are the ones that effectively lower enemy health. And it's this greatest song in the multiverse. The ability decreases the max health of enemies by 50%, and for every 5 moon stacks, the enemy health debuff is applied again. So what you want to do is go moon stacks. So right here. And try to get a great result on Greatest Song in the Multiverse. That can give you a little bit of a health debuff on the enemies. It can give you a significant health debuff on the enemies and let you push further, but that's only if you get lucky. So if you're going to use Elliewick, make sure you've got something, a backup spreader in your pocket. Obviously, things didn't work well for me, so Havilar's probably going to be our go-to. Slot 11. We have a couple different things we could do. As I mentioned before, Warden has a great ultimate just like Prudence. And again, Prudence is an option for moving ranged enemies early on. But Warden has that movement plus his own debuff. So Warden can hex things and make them take more damage from enemies. Now, he's also chaotic, so he can debuff. And he can spread freely stacks. And in this case, you actually want to go Cloak of Flies spec, because that makes that gives them an AoE attack that spreads Freely's debuff to all the surrounding enemies. So Warden is a great option here. Now you saw I also had let me put Warden back in default skin. There we go. I also had Strix lined up over here. There's the default. Strix has Poor Hygiene, so enemies approaching your formation take more damage due to Strix's unique odor. So this is another thing where you might need to use them together, because if the ranged enemies are stopping outside of Strix's Poor Hygiene, you can pull them back and forth. The great thing is you kind of want both. You kind of want Warden and Strix, because Warden can apply his Hex debuff, and it lingers, which means after you've applied it to lots of people, you can then switch and bring in Strix and get the best of both worlds. So this swap is a hot swap you can make to help you push further. So keep that in mind. We're going to leave this on Warden for the moment. Then we come up to our final slot, slot 12. For me, this is a spreader slot. You can spread with Zorbu. Zorbu is chaotic. So you can do that, and it's an AoE, but it is a line-based AoE, which isn't necessarily the best, so I tend to go with Penelope. Penelope is, again, a chaotic spreader. You go with her left spec, which gives her a minor eruption, so that applies an AoE. It also slows things, so again, it helps make things move a little slower towards your formation, but also spreads a lot of that. Well, normally Penelope spreads cheerfulness, but this spreads Freely's debuff around and around and around. Again, here, healing isn't such a big deal. because Ayla's shield is really what's going on. So the specs, not necessarily as big of a deal. And there isn't really any spec that you would go here that would help you with click debuff. So anyone else that we bring in is going to be... we were talking over here. So long rest and special order are the specs for Beetle and Grimm they usually use. Because when we get to... when we swap them out, special order is going to be the debuff that causes enemies to take more damage. So, and long rest is a multiplier on that. Right, so we're giving them the best of both worlds there. I think I covered everything. Oh, I didn't talk about Freely's. Freely's, I've got Gold Find. That's where we go. And then Unlucky for them is what I had for the other one. But let me see if there's... Well, at the end of your run, you're going to want to do Adventurous Tale, but we'll worry about that when we get there. We can just go all Requisition if we want. No, I want Unlucky for them. That buffs... Yeah, that buffs our debuff. So we'll do a little bit of Unlucky for them, and then we do a lot of bit of gold. A lot of bit of gold. That's the thing I just said. All right, so I do already have Freely spec'd to Chaos. Again, this is specifically for the click debuff. So I have my debuffers in. I just need to throw in a couple spreaders. So I'm going to go Penelope and I'm going to go Talon. Right, so both chaotic spreaders that are going to help make that happen. And now we're going to turn our progress back on. And I'm gonna let this build up just because I want to demonstrate that this is not we are not in a regular pushing formation. The damage our champions are doing is not what's killing things. So again, we have some spreaders in Talon. Scatter Tax is also a debuff. I forgot. Thank you for reminding me, chat. Scatter Tax does also have a debuff, but Scatter Tax is what we're spreading to spread a debuff. They also are to spread Freely's, but he also does a small debuff, and we'll take whatever we could get, right? And I spec'd into the one additional Scatter Tax. So we've extended the radius to try to get more people. Now, the thing is once you start spreading this, you need the click actions, right? So we want to be able to then click on what's going on here and kill everything. And that was me just randomly clicking. Now, you can end up with a single enemy. As you'll see, I can keep clicking. I have more than enough click damage to kill off that single enemy. That's what you're gonna. That's your goal, right? You want to have enough damage to just kill without having to worry about using Gem. However, we should talk about Gem. If you don't know about Gem Dark Magic has a Wand of Wonder, where if on a boss level you are left with one regular enemy left over, you can throw the Gem in, and his Wand of Wonder will have a chance to turn that enemy eventually into a chicken that dies instantly. Right? So in that way, if you do get stuck in that situation and you only have one enemy left on the screen, you can get rid of it. However, if you're not able to click through that enemy, that means you need more click damage. And it's probably time to stop on that level and try to set up a farm situation. Which, again, that's something Azaka farming. You're going to want to do that on a boss level, and you're going to want to try to get as many stacks from Kroll as possible. 10 is not okay. In this situation, when you're just killing with debuffs, you're going to want to aim for 20 or higher. 40 is obviously fantastic and is going to give you the best progress, but 20 is going to be your minimum target when you're doing that. Don't stop and farm a single enemy if it has 10 stacks on it, unless you're absolutely desperate. But usually it's worth your time. If you're putting in the effort, the time and the effort to push this far, it's worth your time to stop and take the time it takes to get to what's going on there. So we have spot weakness, but I think we want... Yeah, hold on. I don't normally have I've usually got pushed further than this. Here we go. We want radius of scatter attacks. I'll throw this one in and see what happens. Usually I just throw the radius in, and the rest I just kind of ignore. Usually I'm really focusing more on just the spreading ability of Freely, because quite frankly, Freely is kind of a big deal for this. Freely, Krull, and Orkira are doing the heavy lifting. You can see Krull's heavy lifting with when the stack numbers go up, right? You can, or when his plague numbers go up, because they give you a nice visual for that. They didn't give us a visual for Freely, and Orkira just is. Yeah, as long as we can start popping. These are one things you want to do. You want to start popping the ultimate. You can throw. Oops. Well, now we can bring in Grimm. We can throw an ultimate on, or a familiar on Freely's ultimate and on Ayla's ultimate to spread Electrify. Make sure it's everywhere. And then everything's just going to start dying, right? So in this setup, everything should start dying. We can hot swap from Warden to Strix if we need to. We can stop an Azaka farm if we need to. But as you'll note, I don't even have a clicker over here on my click damage. That's the other place I'm going to want a familiar. And we're just going to let that go up to max. So 812 is currently where I am. I'm doing E249 click damage. And enemies here are dead. Hold on. Enemies currently are E302. So that tells you that right now we're getting progress that's 50 orders of magnitude further than what our damage actually is, based on debuffs. Based just on debuffs. Probably should have respect Orkira's specialization as well. No. No. I don't want to respec Orkira at all. I run Tail Feather so that we get the extra healing bonus. I mean, look, do whatever you think. Again, I don't generally, like I said, I don't necessarily worry about a lot of this as much. I just try to see how far I can go, and frankly, this setup, even before Orkira, got me past 1,000. And once you clear 1,000, here's the other thing. Once you get to 1,002, the damage scaling on enemies changes to the point where they just one-shot you. So this is not super viable for going beyond 1,002. Once you've gotten to 1,000, and once you have enough damage in your formation to get you to over 1,000 and get your achievement, maybe let you Azaka farm at 1,000, you're good. One thing you'll note here, these were potions that were left over from my deep push. You'll note I have Giant Strength. That's not helping us at all. Clairvoyance, fantastic. We'll always take the gold. Heroism, yeah, we'll take the health. And Speed, sure. You notice something's missing here, and that's Fire Breath. Do not pop an epic potion of Fire Breath on a click debuff run. Click debuff then does not work. You can run like an hour long or less potions. You can run those timed potions just to help get you there quicker. Totally fine. Do not run a permanent one. You cannot remove these once you get there. What happens with this is the reason the Fire Breath is not functional in a click debuff attempt is because Fire Breath potions are based off your bud, right? It's your base ultimate damage. Well, first off, our bud here, absolute garbage. Absolute garbage, right? E186 compared to E249. So our bud, changing our click damage to be based off bud would be utterly pointless. But also, because bud is already based off damage that has factored in debuffs, bud-based abilities firing off on something with a debuff won't then also include that debuff again. So they do not double diff on debuffs, and that's included in terms of if you put in a Fire Breath potion. So what we want here is pure click damage affecting lots of debuffs. Bud is now irrelevant. So anything bud-based becomes irrelevant. We don't want any fire breath potions. We don't want that epic fire breath potion up here. And if I were to put in like a 5-minute fire breath potion, you'd notice we just would stop doing anything at all. Enemies would just build up until it wore off. So stick with that. Stick with that. Snow Lover TV, why do you need the healing after... I'm going to address this right. Why do you need the healing after you stacked Orkira's heal instead of having Orkira stack 2 breaths instead of 1? Traditionally there are issues in this game when, upon changing specializations, where sometimes things don't work right. So if I can not change specializations at all for people during a run once I've set things up, that's where I'm going to stay. So again, it's just me maybe being overly cautious again, and relying on very specific things, and not necessarily. I don't want to. Once I get things set, I just want to leave it. So it's kind of me being overly hesitant about wonkiness in the way things apply. I generally don't find, as you can see, I'm pushing fairly well. I generally don't find that I have any issues stacking up Orkira's debuff. That being said, I also, I don't have her ultimate cooldown maxed yet, but, it's a decent, and the combined total I'm getting from everything else is more than enough to push. So if you absolutely positively need every last bit of click DPS and debuff you can get, there are things you can do to maximize this. I encourage you to go read through the entirety of Cyrus Dane's click debuff guide. There are formations listed in it. They're shown in pictures because this is a Google Doc. It was linked in chat earlier, and maybe Jay can drop it in again right now. It's going to have a lot of those different strategies. I also encourage you to talk to Cyrus Dane. Cyrus Debuff. I think he needs to change his name now. Cyrus Dane on the Discord. They're usually around quite a bit. There are also a lot of people who know about this and use it quite a lot. There it is. So, again, Cyrus Dane is kind of the keeper of the guide, and the one that deals with this more in depth, and will be able to talk to you about all of the little minutiae of maximizing thing. I am giving you the general, what I usually do. I'm giving you the general overall description, because you may not have all these champions. You may have different champions, and you just need to know how to put those champions together and make this work. So I'm kind of just explaining just overall how this functions, and giving you a demonstration that works for me. Hey, look, folks, we're at 1001. And I didn't have to stop and farm again. So yeah, I mean, this is even with my potentially suboptimal setup, I was able to push this because I have lots of favor. I stopped I think once to favor farm. That was it. And I ran that gold find potion, right? So right now we're looking at, you probably can't see it. I still, because I have what's my favor? Oh, that's right. I have really nice favor in Sword Coast, folks. I have 1.60 E-nice favor in Sword Coast, so I'm able to push with, less stopping and less Azaka farming. At this point, I only have my Torm's favor gain on this run is E56, so this isn't even going to be super useful for me. We're going to be able to click debuff a little further because nothing's getting to my party, but the second a ranged enemy appears, I'm toast, folks. I'm toast. All right, so we're going to call that the tutorial. Again, this was originally something that at the very first even reference to clicking for fun and profit at endgame that I remember was in Discord from Silisa, who had been talking about how they had tons of gold and eventually reach a point where you can just continue upgrading with your click damage even though your champions aren't, and you can push further if you can make it that far. And they were the one that had made it that far, but other people at the time hadn't. And then Tale of Two Champions came out, And the only way to beat it was click debuff. And then people realized, well, if we can beat this with 2 debuffers, what can we do in the regular game? And now there's a whole potential meta for it. So big thanks to Cyrus Dean for creating a guide. I don't like to create all the guides. I love it when other people create guides, and they've done a great job of keeping this one updated. I think the last update was, well, the last update they mentioned at the top, I think, was Talon. Hold on. Have they added it in with Elliewick? No, updated July 29th with Elliewick in the gold farm team, but Elliewick does also, but depending on who you have and who you don't have, Elliewick does also reduce the health of enemies, so that might be something that's an option for you. Keep that in mind. All right, we're going to take a short break. We're going to come back. I'm assuming I'm going to get to a level with ranged enemies, and they're going to kill me real fast. But then we'll get into the Q&A, folks. So hang tight, stretch, listen to some good music. I think we're listening to debuffer music today. Oh, I think maybe this is Orkira. I think I have Orkira and Elliewick lined up, so let's see who it is.
I want you to be happy, I want you to be safe. And if it can't be either, then I'll toast you in the grave. I'm hanging with the phoenix as you travel across the land, thwarting lots of evil with the cast of burning hand. So let's take it one problem at a time. If we're there together, there's no mountain we won't climb. So grab around the fire, my friends, and sing another line. Let's celebrate together till we all run out of rhymes. Hey! I'll heal you with my fire, I'll catch you with my wings. And when it gets real dire, I'll devour all the things. My friends are like marshmallows, flammable and sweet. I try hard not to burn them when I'm bringing home the heat. Then we'll take it one problem at a time. If we're there together, there's no mountain we won't climb. Together around the fire, my friends, and sing another line. Let's celebrate together till we all run out of rhymes. Hey! I'm always up for travel, I've been to many lands. We can even go right now, just let me grab my pants. I'll follow you through danger and heal you with the spell. And if we stick together, everything will turn out swell. Then we'll take it one problem at a time. If we're there together, there's no mountain we won't climb. So gather around the fire, my friends, and sing another line. Let's celebrate together till we all run out of rhymes. Hey! Jumping through the portals and traveling the plains, always fighting evil and easing all your pains. I'm helping out the heroes and the BFGs. One day we'll be happy and all will be at ease. Then we'll take it one problem at a time. If we're there together, there's no mountain we won't climb. So gather around the fire, my friends, and sing another line. Let's celebrate together till we all run out of rhymes. Then we'll take it one problem at a time. If we're there together, there's no mountain we won't climb. It's been a lot of fun here, but now it's time to go. We'll come back again tomorrow and be on another show.
That was a short break. Welcome back, everybody. We're going to head into the Q&A portion. So if you ask a question, I'm going to try and go back and touch on it now. Again, I will do my best to answer these questions. I am not the expert in this subject matter. No, your questions and challenges do not offend me at all. Because again, this is not my usual way of playing. So I am heavily reliant on everything that Cyrus Dane has put into their guide and the conversations that I observe in Discord. And I'm not there for all of them. So let's hit this up. Are there any goals in game that require click debuff? One, the aforementioned Tale of Two Champions. It requires you doing click debuff. You're limited to 2 champions, and you're going to end up using 2 debuffers to get through there. I think I usually start off with like Jarlaxle and some other instant form of gold find. and it just varies on whatever account I'm on and who I have, just so that I can ramp up my gold and click as far as possible up, and I pop a bunch of gold find potions. And then as it's harder and harder to kill things instantly, I start switching into debuffers, and ideally I end up with like Ayla and Krull, right? Or Gromma and Krull, either one. It just depends, and you've got to do that for patrons, so it's just, it can be a little difficult, but yeah, it requires click debuff to complete currently. Do you combine Orkira and Beetle and Grimm stacks and freely debuff together? I mean, yeah, all these debuffs. I'm not sure, Gleaser, exactly what. Is it just that I'm using all of them? Yeah, I mean, use it, all the debuffs, folks. You're trying to combine as many possible debuffs. I can't believe we're still going. I got so lucky picking a level that didn't instantly switch into ranged enemies. But did we die on 1016? 1016 has ranged. Yes. So here's the different damage scaling. We're just one-shotting things. Orkira tried to save us, but you can only go so far, and then those ranged enemies toast you. So, hey, 1016. That may be the furthest I've ever gone, honestly. Yeah, interesting. Still only E56 gold find, though. So, maybe I'll have to set up an Azaka farm after the show. My question is longer than Twitch allows? Then condense it, because no question should need to be that long. Will we see Z1002 during the stream? Yes, apparently. Is there a gold farming wall for favor gains? No. Currently getting to E50 favor and capping out when I start at E50 favor. I mean, if you're not pushing further, if you're not able to push further, you will see diminishing returns going to the same level, to the point where then it's just, you're not getting anything at all. And that's where conversions from events and time gates matter. You can't just go to the same place. Again, the furthest currently usually is, well, with click debuff is just usually just a bit over 1,000. Here I got to 1,015, where I could potentially farm a boss, or farm a boss level. But yeah, eventually, until they allow you to push further, you're just gonna hit diminishing returns. Why doesn't Tyrell count as a base caster? A caster base attacker despite having a cantrip as his base attack? I don't know. That doesn't really have anything to do with click debuff, but let me go look at Tyrell. Shillelagh. He smacks the closest enemy with his staff. So that's a melee attack. I think what you're referring to is that Shillelagh is a spell, but the effect of Shillelagh, I'm doing this off the top of my head, but I'm going to go to DMD Beyond and look, is to turn an item into a magical item that you then hit things with, and it's considered a magical weapon for that purpose. But that doesn't mean you're attacking with a cantrip. Yes, the wood of a club or quarterstaff you're holding is imbued with nature's power. For the duration, you can use your spellcasting ability instead of strength for the attack and damage rolls, but that doesn't make it a spell attack. You're still swinging a melee club. The weapon also becomes magical if it isn't already. Yeah. So that's why. You're using a cantrip to create a magical weapon, and then you're smacking him in the face with it. Smacking him in the face with it. How try auto progress familiars? Don't know what that means. Chuman 2. There may be a language barrier. If you can rephrase that, I would appreciate it if you're still around. So the more powerful your CPU, the better you should handle the lag from computing. I don't necessarily know that's true. The more powerful your system is, period, the more powerful it is able to handle math. Yes, but that math may not be passed off to your CPU. In some cases, that gets passed to your GPU. You're going to have to see. I don't know exactly in this game which one handles it. That's not something I've ever dove into. So yeah, I'm not sure I can say one way or the other. But generally speaking, you want to have Like the stronger your platform, the platform, whether a computer or a console or a phone, the stronger the system overall, usually the better you handle computations. Wouldn't you use Strix or Warden instead of Averin? Yes. I think this was asked when I was just in a generic pushing formation and not in click debuff. Averin is not a part of a click debuff formation. How much of click debuff is item level dependent? A little. Do you have to have all purple to get any proper benefit from it? No. I mean, click debuff will always apply, period, because it's an ability-based thing. And as with anything related to an ability, if there is gear that improves it, that's going to make it better. But that doesn't make it reliant on it. Like that... Yeah. Like I used to tell people, look, a naked Krull is better than just about anyone else for pushing power because his stuff really just relies on stacks, like instances multiplying against instances, and that's where the biggest boofs come from. Like going from 10 to 20 stacks is the biggest thing, and that's a feat, not like that's affected by feats, not gear. The rest is just icing on the cake. And that's kind of here. Like you can still do... It's really gold dependent, ultimately. It's primarily gold dependent, and the amount of gold you need goes to start this goes down based off how powerful your debuffing team is, and that could be affected by gear. Shouldn't Orkira touch and rack as well? Oh, when doing Orkira stacking? I mean, that would be ideal, right? But I'm not really in the ideal formation for that, so I'm just trying to create a situation where I'm creating the best potential. For me, that worked. If we swapped Orkira back, I'm losing an adjacency for Artemis's Observe, which isn't a huge difference, but I don't know. I mean, try it out. Again, it's the formation that you're using for click debuff, or for something like Orkira healing stacking. Is going to vary based off whatever layout you are in. Play around with it. Again, I'm just showing an example. I'm not showing the definitive way to do something. Wouldn't Jim with fan club spec be a better champion for the overheal formation? I maybe. I don't know. Again, if you want to do it a different way. Let's see. Oh, I was just throwing Farida in. I just wanted a magic attacker. No, because this is... I don't think it's going to matter, but... Yeah, I mean, you do you. Maybe. Try it out. All I really want all I really care about when I'm putting in those DPS is that they're a magic-based attack. I just throw them in. Because generally speaking, as long as I'm getting over E15, I'm fine. Okay, that's not related to this. I'll come back to it. I've heard it mentioned in Discord multiple times that CNE does not like click debuff. Why is that? Click debuff is fairly late game mechanic. It doesn't seem to be exploiting any bugs. It's later proof they invested tons of time into the game, playing and learning the various mechanics peculiarities, gathering a fairly large roster. So here's the thing. The game is... I stated this at the top. I'll state it again now. The game was designed by the developers for you to use click damage to progress a little faster through early levels. But then the actual pushing and achieving high levels in this game was meant to be based off building a proper formation that pushes with the champion damage, not with clicking damage. So when they've talked about potentially changing this, that's why. The other reason is once you have a decent set of debuff champions, any champion that gets added to the game, if that's all you're using to progress in the game, if any other champions that they add are just kind of pointless, and any content that they add, then the only way they could potentially give you challenging content is to try to break things up with armor and whatnot, and it's like it just removes a lot of what the game actually is, which is them putting puzzles before you that you have to solve by building formations. If there is one way to solve every puzzle, then they've not done a good job as developers. So this is kind of This is why I'm amazed they're letting us show this on stream. This is kind of an example of at high game that they have not done a good job in making sure that you're pushing with your formations, and instead they've created a system where you can just push with click damage. And they've talked in the past about how they had thought about changing click damage, and then they'd held off because they were going into because they were doing a lot of bug fixes for, like, this was right after Modrons, and they were focusing more on the quality of life of fixing issues in the game than potentially changing how click damage works. So they may revisit that. I don't know. Maybe do control L's to show who what kills. Click damage is killing diminutive. As long as you're going over unapproved strategies, you might as well mention that Briv is using this strategy to skip some bosses. I mean, sure. That's not necessarily unapproved, though. Everybody knows Briv skips bosses. The developers know Briv skips bosses. I think folks know Briv can potentially skip a boss. If you get it to 100% or more guaranteed, you can put him in before a boss level and skip a boss. But again, I think you can just pull the bosses to you and just click kill them, and it's fine. Which Modron core should you use for click debuff? Whichever one gives you the most gold find? Exactly, the real bunny beast. Gold find is king here. I'm using my modest core because that one gives me the most gold. Luck of Yondala doesn't say what it does, only that it affects this champion. How am I supposed to know what it actually does? Well, so, right. Like here it says, grants the Luck of Yondala to this champion. And this is an example of them not putting enough information in here. But so if we come over to Formation Buffs tab, it actually tells you what's going on. So you get that information over here. It's also in the guides to the champion all over the place. It's in the champion spotlight, but in the game it is right here. So you could find out right here. It's just we don't visually see lots of stacks when we're doing it. Man, that owlbear's just getting repeatedly clicked and killed, isn't he? Oh well. Let's do a level that isn't just the owlbear dying over and over again, because that seems rude. The description of Fire Breath Potion says it adds Bud, but instead it replaces the damage with Bud. So it feels like it replaces the damage with Bud. It may add the damage with Bud, but the problem that when it comes to click debuff is if anything is applying Bud-based damage, it then disables the debuffs on that target, so you're losing. Then it doesn't count into the debuff, so it doesn't even give you the base. Even if it added, it's not giving you the base damage from the clicks applied with the debuffs, because it is now considers that click damage to be Bud based. So it just doesn't work. Well, what's the meaning of Bud? It's base ultimate damage. It's right down here. This is the only thing you should be using to measure the strength of your formations, except in click debuff when it's just your level over here. But instead of using base DPS or average DPS, which are both lie to you, you use Bud. Bud is always telling you what your hits are actually doing. So that's where you want to go, just in general. Assume it would be best to open chests at the end of a click debuff run. I mean, if you're... Yeah, but if you've click debuffed all the way up here, I mean, is gold really... Like, you're going to Azaka farm and get your gold. You're not just going to open... You're not going to open pop silver chests and be like, woo, make it rain. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I think you're just going to Azaka make it rain. Because you're not doing this without Azaka. So, would you be able to talk how to convert this to an Azaka farm? I can never seem to get the boss killed without killing regular enemies. Sure. Yeah, we got time. Here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove all the familiars. Let's go back. That poor owlbear. But let's go back. So, Gaarawarr, why are you removing all the familiars? Well, the first rule of Azaka farming is you want to build up pilfer stacks on everything, right? So, we have Krull. We want to give Krull as much time as possible to stack things up. I'm even going to put a wall here so they can't get past it for a second. I basically want to slow down their progress towards me as much as possible. I want to give them as much time to get these pilfer stacks. I can see it's building right here. Pilfer is the green vial on the bottom. So the little numbers here. So I know this caterpillar has 10 of them, but I want to make sure, I want to give it enough time to give 10 pilfer stacks on everything in this giant mob of enemies. This also is giving plenty of time for Warden to hex everything. That's nice. It's giving time for Orkira to stack lots of debuffs. So don't you dare kill the owlbear. I'm going to kill it. Oh, I am. Robo-Goblin, cover your eyes. Yeah, so basically I'm giving plenty of time to make sure that there are 10 stacks of pilfer on every enemy on the screen. This is standard Azaka prep. Now, normally this is happening on my tank, but because we have all of these slows, I'm able to do it without them ever touching my tank. And I'm being very careful. Again, I have no familiars out. I'm being very careful not to click on the field to do damage. Because once I click on the field, everything should explode. And I should be left with just one enemy. And it's RNG as to who that is. Let's find out. Nope, they all blew up. And Azaka died. And Ayla died. Again, I'm so high that I can't even... I'm at so high a level... so high a level that I can't let them even touch me, and I forgot about that part. I am normally not Azaka farming. Folks, this is my first post-1002 Azaka farm attempt, so yeah. Oops. Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna let this build up a bit. Again, and then I just have to keep doing that. Normally, things wouldn't blow up so completely. Normally, you'd be left with maybe one or two. That did not happen. Is click debuff an efficient strategy for Rare Reborn? Ooh, I don't think so, but you can try it. Yeah, with all of the extra, with all of the armored stuff in Avernus, it becomes challenging, again, for the reasons I stated at the top. You can only click through an armored segment once every 6 seconds, and you need a lot of damage to get through those segments, so... it's worth trying. I know there's a lot of people who have very high favor who are using it to just, again, to kind of skip the whole build an actual champion damage formation and complete things, and they're just using click debuff. Wow, I'm not... The problem is our trader is blowing up everything. Our trader is blowing up everything, and we really want it to leave one thing behind, so I'm not sure if I can pull this off. Well, okay, that left one, but it's only got 10 stacks, so... let's... Nope, it was out of range for the pull. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay, there we go. Yeah. So this is going to take trial and error. I'll keep messing with it, folks, but let me answer more questions. How much effect does the health debuff in the Modron Core have? It seems 94% reduction in health would make enemies pretty weak. I don't feel like I notice it. Well, that's because we're dealing with orders of magnitude of health that are... like, we're at E311 health. 94% of that, you're... even if it was... like, you ever remember... scientific notation is... you're moving decimal places, right? So if we were to just give it a little more of a bonus and say that it's not a full 2 decimal places, but let's say we give it there, that means I'm only reducing the health here by EO2. So technically this would normally be an E315 health boss, right? So when you're dealing with super large numbers, you have to keep that in mind. Oh, there we go, folks. We did it. We did it. There's 30 stacks of pilfer. That's good enough for me. So that's it. You just kind of got to play around with it. You got to work it, and you got to with click debuff specifically. You just kind of have to keep trying it until you get left with one that has 20 stacks or more. Let me throw in my Azaka farm. This is going to be... you know what? I've got to do this differently. Havilar, come out here. And freeze that enemy for me, please. So we can't let this enemy touch our front line, so we have to run some Havilar shenanigans. We have to be careful not to click on the field. Nope, we killed it. We killed it. Well, we didn't kill it. I killed it, folks. That's on me. Alright. I accidentally clicked on the field, and it died. I'm going to have to remove... Well, it doesn't matter. The debuffs were already stacked. Yeah, this is going to be interesting. This is going to be interesting. Do potions work with second and third parties? I feel like speed potions for faster farm. Like the lower... I don't think the epic speed potions work, but I could be wrong. I don't use potions for the background parties at all. Not for speed. If I'm using a speed potions are the ones that I go through the most of and tend to be low on. So if I'm going to be using speed potions, I'm going to be using it where I'm getting the most effect, most bang for my proverbial buck, and that's going to be in my active party. So yeah, but I have heard that they work to a certain degree in the background. Yeah, if that's what you want to do with it, you can. If you've got enough to spend that way, go for it. How about using Baloth now? Baloth doesn't debuff for damage. Baloth adds more gold find. I would use Baloth in my Azaka farming. Hey, there's 20 stacks. Now once again, can I do this without killing everything? Pull people out that I don't want. Nope, nope, everything died. Everything died. Wait, now my party's different. Oh, I had Havilar in this one. There we go. Alright, yeah. I could probably figure it out, but maybe not live on stream. But, yeah. Getting that one left there and not being able to kill it is being hard. It's hard to do while I'm also trying to answer questions, folks. If you get a 40-stack Pilfer and respec Crawl, will you lose the 40 stacks? Yes. You never respec Crawl. You never respec Crawl. And this is why, in general, I don't like respecking people mid-run for any reason. Like, if it's something that I'm building something up on, it's just, I worry about it messing stuff up. Orkira's got a little bug anyway that screws up her debuff amount sometimes, and I don't. Yeah, that kind of stuff I stay away from. Hey, Super Steve. Oh, that's not... Hold on, we'll come back to that one. Any more click debuff? Since we're also sort of covering Azaka farming today, any tips on getting a high Pilfer stack Gimmick? Frankly, it's getting a Mimic and having it stay around with the stacks is just pure RNG, almost as rough as what I'm trying to do right now. So, yeah, I don't work on getting the Mimic as much because a Mimic is it's 10 times the gold, which is nice, but it's not necessarily worth all the time anymore. It used to be worth it. It isn't anymore. Okay, back to general questions. Any hints to help with Quint's Dwarven Splat achievement? And I can only seem to get 5 stacks, but never reach 6. Hold on. I'm actually going to have to go look up my guide for that so that I know exactly what it is. I want to say this has to do with applying his debuff to everything. But it's been so long since I did it. I have to refresh my memory. Because I want to say it has to do with building up a large stack of enemies and then ulting. But let me double check. Scroll, scroll, scroll. Yeah, max out Quint's count 'em off ability for 6 consecutive seconds. Yeah. So my notes here in the guide are you want to push to a level where your tank can handle 20 plus enemies without issue. Yet your DPS can one-shot the entire group. You pull out your you get to that level, you pull out your DPS, you let over 20 enemies build up on your tank. Then you have Point alt the group to mark them all, and instantly then drop your DPS back in and let them clear the group. That should instantly grant you the achievement, basically. Pretty much. I mean, it's going to count off the seconds. But the one thing you have to keep an eye on is Point's timer for the ability, because there isn't a timer that removes ticks. So you want to do it as it's resetting so that you have time to get that full 6 full seconds. So I believe the timer is like 10 seconds. But that's basically it. Yeah. So hit up my guide. You can, here's the link for Point's guide. And I'll go over more of that. Have the Electrum chests finally filled the blank spaces in your item collection? I don't know. I don't look at it anymore because I know that, I mean, I look at it when I get a brand new champion. But I think, hold on, let's go to the collection. I think who I was missing one for was Lucius. Let's see if I can remember. No, that's a Lindra. Where's Lucius again? Oh my gosh. No, it's got to be back here somewhere. There's so many champions in the game, folks. There he is. Nope, still don't have it. Still don't have it. But yeah, I know now that Electrums are eventually going to fill it in. Electrums are eventually going to fill it in, and that's fine. That removed a lot of my stress. Is there a class you think would make a good tank with a magic attack? Paladins. They've already put in Dinar as a paladin and using command. It's just they didn't make it. He's just not a tank, so they could do that. I mean, command isn't usually something that you use as a base attack, but you could totally do that. I mean, there's probably a couple different options, but that's one. What's the best method to progress early game? Building a formation and pushing with it. Like, I think early game, your best, the thing that you need to learn is how to build your own formations. I have a guide for that, Formation Strategy 101. You're going to want to kind of learn to understand champions and how they fit together and their roles in a formation to build out your best situation. Just copy pasting other people's formations, it's not going to do you a lot of favors. It may get you through stuff sometimes, but what you really need to do when you're looking at a formation someone offers up is try to understand why that formation would be good, and see if it's good for you, because everyone's game is unique in the sense that you're going to have different gear and different item levels and different favor, and that changes things. That changes things for you. What does Control L do? Well, Control with a bunch of L's brings up a debug window. Or some kind of, it lets you see what's killing things on the screen, but someone was saying you should use that to see who's killing things, and well, clicks are killing things. I don't, some people like to use that and get that kind of granular detail out of their gameplay. I've never found a use for it personally, but if that's your thing, go for it. Can Selice's Deflect get you past range enemies? So, I was using Selice the other day. While in Deflect stance, Selice can deflect ranged and magical projectiles back at the enemies that cast them, completely negating their damage and dealing 6 seconds of Bud-based damage. Let's see if it's... Something tells me that this isn't always on. But let's see. Let's see. I mean, I'll happily... If this will take me past... We're losing a debuffer, and that could be problematic, but... Again, I don't normally try to get past 1002 or find ways to get around it. Potentially, so that's other people taking range damage. Huh? Let's try it out. Let's get her into deflect. Oh, I gotta put her in first. Duh. Oh, she is in. She's right back here. That's deflect. Okay. Let's see what happens. It's entirely possible. But you can see already that we've lost a little bit of debuff power. Yeah, as long as they're targeting her and they're not targeting any enemy in your formation, which some ranged enemies do, it looks like that's working. The problem is we're seeing this creep up. We are not able to kill things as quickly as we did before. So yeah, I can get a little further with that. Good call. New champion. New champion. Gotta learn the best places for them. I can only get level 308 on Wagon Train in Tomb of Annihilation. I use a Fire Breath Potion and Strength Potions. Any tips for me, please? Shandoa, yeah, I mean, you've got a... It sounds like you've got part of the right strategy down with Fire Breath and Strength. Now, are you Bud Spiking? And that means... no, see, now we died. Because I think I think those were attacking anybody. Let's go look. Are you Bud Spiking? And that means... Wagon Train, the further you go in Wagon Train, the more formations, the more slots in your formation are taken up by a wagon. So what you have to do is when you get to the higher levels, you have to you have to jump all the way back to level 1 by shift clicking on the left arrow up here. Removing all your familiars, putting in a full formation, leveled up formation, setting your Bud, and then turning auto progress back on and jumping back up to the level you were at with the lower number of champions and just clearing with Bud, and then you repeat every time your Bud drops. That's how you get past a situation like that. So you were in the right neighborhood. You were using Fire Breath and Giant Strength, but you have to make sure you're dropping back to level 1 and spiking your Bud with a full formation. So what is it that's killing us here? I think we're just... Either one's randomly getting through, which may happen. That's why I said I thought this was just every now and then for Celise, and not every single ranged attack. You know what? I'll go look it up in her guide. They're also getting real close. Oops, that's the wrong button. Gaarawarr. She can deflect one attack for each charge of deflection she has and gains deflection stacks by attacking while in deflect stance. That's the part that's not in the game, and that's what's getting us killed every now and then. So she has to attack and gain a deflection stack to be able to deflect, and occasionally we're running out of stacks. So yeah, sure, you can pull this off, but eventually it's gonna stop working. Like here, now they're hitting it. They're just getting all the way up there and we're dead. So yeah, I got a few levels further. But not necessarily going to get us super far. How to get rid of Control L. There's an X button on the screen when you bring it up. Look for it. Will you make a guide to 1500 too? No. I'm Dylan. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing that guide. We talked about it. Here. So there's so let me explain this question. Yame asked, "Are you going to make a guide to getting to 1500 too?" So click debuff can get you over 1,000, but as you can see, not a whole lot further. The only way to get to 1500, and 1500 is the number that gets thrown out because 1002 is where we see the damage level on enemies spike to the point where you get one shot. 1500 is what's considered what gets called a band wall. It's actually you get suspended. At that point, you're like you're not supposed to be there. Like if you can't get there, it's not, you're not using normal pushing strategies to get there. You're very clearly using either a bug, which is what happened before, or an issue with it's happened a few times, or an issue with abilities. Maybe people finding ways to use abilities that they weren't intended to be used that way, and then they've got to patch that out, and things like that. Like, if you're getting that far, it's not through normal, what would be considered normal progress. So the developers put in what the community refers to as a ban wall, because if you hit that number, which is 1500, your account just automatically gets suspended for a few hours, maybe a day, I don't remember. I've never been there. I have no interest to hit it. But it's not like there's anything there. There are no adventures or variants that require you to go that far. This is just people who just want to either get tons of gold or just see how far they can go once. I mean, that's yeah. The only way to get there is by using interactions from Briv, Human, Jim, and Havilar in some cases. If you don't have the super high levels on Human, Havilar helps. It makes it easier to basically, but you need to basically skip levels because you're using a high item level Briv who's guaranteed to jump like 4 to 5 levels. So that basically once you start Briv jumping, he jumps every boss every time and you never have to deal with a boss level. You use Human. The Human is for granting a bonus credit so that you only have to kill the Human and Havilar combination. You only have to kill one fiend to get complete credit for the entire level, and thus trigger Jim's jump, or trigger Briv's jump. And you use Jim's Wand of Wonder to turn one of the enemies on the screen into an Abyssal Chicken, which is a fiend, right? So you're relying on this combination of things that the developers never really expected people to use together, to utterly and completely skip all the content in the game. Like you never have to do boss fights. You never have to deal with any of the challenges of any level ever again. And this is, kind of like Click Debuff, but worse. That's how you get to 1500. We could demonstrate that on stream, but for me to demonstrate that on stream requires me to have very high item levels on Briv and Human to be able to get to those guaranteed numbers. That's not something I have interest in getting myself, but they would probably give me the blacksmithing contracts to pump that up, but then people would complain that I got all this power for free. Yeah, normally I don't accept boosts or anything on my account to do these guides, normally speaking. I did get a small level boost on my strong core, like a couple levels, skipped a couple levels to make sure it was at 15 so I could demonstrate for one video guide, and then the fast core when it came out, skipped a couple levels because I just couldn't level it up fast enough before I delayed the guide so that I would have time to grind as far as I could, and then they just maxed it out so that I could do the guide for everybody. That's the only bonus I've ever gotten. And those are things that I would have maxed out anyway, so. Gaarawarr getting himself banned on a live stream would be an epic level of dedication to the community. People have done it. I've watched people stream it. So it's happened. It's just not something I do. I've heard that you can only really have one DPS on your team at a time. Why is that? Can't you buff 2 DPS equally? No, you can't. Well, potentially you could, right? But if you're buffing both of them equally, let's hypothesize a formation that would buff 2 DPS equally. You have removed one buffing slot from your formation and filled it with a DPS. In doing so, you have given yourself less overall buffs and thus less overall damage. So you have nerfed yourself just so that you can have 2 DPS. The point of the game, currently the way the game works is that you focus everything you've got onto 1 DPS so that you have the most potential damage, and then you kill everything that way. My automation keeps not progressing. Is there anything I can do about that? Potentially. There's a lot of troubleshooting, Florian, that can happen. There's a lot of questions that have to be asked. Like I ask people, like, what do they have out? Where are their familiars? Like, where are their familiars clicking? Are they using champions? Are they not? What adventure are they running? Is it just general? Are they pushing in through variants? Like, there's lots of things that could stop your progress in the background. But there's also bugs. So your best bet is just to submit a ticket explaining what you expected to happen and what you saw happen, and then let them look into it. Wandering Bereft. Question. Playing Devil's Advocate. First off, the devil doesn't need an advocate. He does fine on his own. But I'm gonna see this anyway. By tacitly endorsing this strategy today, I don't know that that's endorsed. This is endorsing. C&E seems to acknowledge that as almost all players will be doing click debuff anyway. Oh, there's some real major assumptions in this. It offers the quickest progression. That therefore, moving forward, they will need to scale the game to a level commensurate with the words and power of the strategy at the end game, which most players will have. No. If you don't that power up, play the way you want, becomes click debuff required discuss. No. I don't agree with a lot of your statements there. I don't agree that this is an endorsement. It's literally me and Dylan sitting down to try to come up with topics that the community asks questions about repeatedly, and we have seen for months and months and months that people have lots of questions about this. So we tossed it out as a possibility, and we put it multiple weeks out, and thinking, well, if maybe if they don't want if they don't want me talking about it publicly on their stream, then they would nuke it, right? And we're here, so it's fine. But the idea that this is the quickest progression, not at all. You literally have to progress in the game and know how to do the regular game to get here. All this really does is then get you some achievements. Truly, in my mind, achievements for progression in favor, like the level progression in favor. You still have to go out and do the rest, play the rest of the game. But it's not quick, and it's not necessarily possible for everybody because of the lag it causes. So, do you have a Strahd guide? I'm almost to him. Do you mean like for a patron? No. I don't know that. Yeah, no. I'm trying to, in my head, I'm thinking a Strahd patron guide would basically a guide to every variant and how to do them, and there's over 200. So yeah, I'm never going to do that personally. Ultimately, my guide to patrons is, hey, did you stop and learn before you got patrons how to build formations? Because if you didn't, you better learn now. Because patrons want you to do their variants, and their variants require you to build formations with whatever champions you might have available. So your formation patrons are tests of your formation building ability. So in that sense, I guess I have a patron guide, and that I have a formation strategy 101 guide. Yeah. Who puts up that wall? Is that Gromma? Yes, that was Gromma's ultimate. How does favor affect gem farming? It's indirect. It's indirect. Basically, the more favor you have, the further you can click kill, which just means the more efficient you can be on your runs if you have Shandy as a speed champion, because Shandy requires 60 seconds of your formation not being hit before her speed effect kicks in, which means if you're only cycling to 30, you're probably never getting any use to Shandy. So the further you can go, the more efficient you are with Shandy. That's really all that people care about when it comes to that. If you're not using Shandy, you can cycle to 30 and it's fine. But you're also losing some time in the reset from that back to level 1, right? So it's just a little bit of efficiency. How does Rosie's deflect work? Rosie deflects ranged attacks and magical attacks for adjacent allies, but on a cooldown timer, much like, I think it's like every 5 or 6 seconds. Her ultimate will let her do it repeatedly, off cooldown, I believe, for a short period of time. But that's basically it. It's an adjacency based effect, but for occasional stuff. I used to use it in a couple things, like for the Xanathar and his gazers. There's a certain level in Waterdeep where you're just getting wrecked by those, and using Rosie actually can help out, just making sure Rosie's adjacent to as many people as possible, including your tanks. Does course Rapid Strike and attack speed buff affect Azaka's tigers and farming? I don't believe so, because it's not a base attack. It's just an effect of the timer of the tigers that's getting triggered every certain number of seconds, is my understanding. I would never give up a... Here's the real answer for me. I would never give up a gold find slot in my formation for Korth. Can Havilar's imps spread Freely's debuff? No, because I don't... Well, ooh. I don't think they're considered a base attack. Here's the problem, and here's why I don't know the answer fully to this question. We have no way to track, really, the number of debuffs on a target for Freely. And you would kind of need to know that to know if when the imps attacked they were applying things, you would need to see the numbers go up. Maybe there's some other way to do that. I don't know. Kevin in the chat dropping some truth. Click debuff is not as smooth as Gar's made it seem. Pushing and swapping out Jim and then Azaka farming stalls make the strategy time intensive. Yes. Again, I have very nice favor in this campaign that makes this a smoother run. But that's not what normally this is. You crawl 5 levels, and I do mean crawl 5 levels at a time. Stop in Azaka farm. Crawl 5 levels at a time. Stop in Azaka farm. It's rough. I also have really good gear, and you know, I've got both. I've got really good gear and all of the required champions. So yeah, it's challenging. It's very challenging. Do cleave attacks spread freely as Yandala? Yes, as do multi-attacks. It's whatever the cleave potentially hits, or whatever any AoE or multi-attack hits. As long as they have the luck of Yandala, then it should be applying to all of it. Shara's 50k gem feat bonds of Kirsabal. Does that affect both bonds? Yes. I believe. Hold on. Now I've got to go look up that specific thing. But, I mean, if it's... Yeah, it affects the Shara's bond abilities. So that affects all of them. That affects everything that has to do with her bonds. Did we end up with just one enemy again? All right. What feats do I have on Crawl? Both the Virulent Strain ones. Because when you're doing Click Debuff or Azaka farming, that's... Well, in general, if you're using Crawl and you have both Virulent Strain feats, that's what you want to use. If you only have one, use one and then something else. But Virulent Strain is what makes Crawl effectively broken in terms of the multiplicative nature of his plagues. Are there buffers and maybe strategies around attack speed? I don't think it's popular, but Prudence has a reset mechanic which could be interesting. Well, there are only a couple champions in the game that affect attack speed in any kind of meaningful way. I'm like, why are we dying? And then I remember, oh yeah, I put in Celise. I'm like, shouldn't we be fine? Oh, that's the ranged one. Okay, so yeah, we'll go to 114. So there are a couple champions that do some attack speed stuff. Like, Human does a flat bonus, which is nice. That's what you'd like. In a certain, I think it's when they're in a certain position. Korth does one, but only if you hit a marked target, which makes it fine for AoE champions, but absolute garbage in most cases for a single target champion. Once you get a lot of enemies on the field, there's just no guarantee you're going to get it. So generally speaking, there aren't a lot of things that are going to reduce attack speed. Now, Prudence specifically, I want to call out, it does not change her attack speed. It just gives her a free attack. Lets her attack again without having to wait for the cooldown timer. It doesn't reduce her attack speed. So that's not quite the same thing. There are champions out there who can do some attack speed shenanigans, like Ishii is always attacking faster than anyone else in the formation. That's literally one of her abilities. She will always attack faster than whoever the fastest attacker is in the formation. Artemis can do a lot of stuff with speeding up his attacks, how often he attacks, especially when you fire his ultimate. Basically, anytime any other DPS champion in the formation attacks, Artemis then gets a free attack. So there isn't a lot around that, and that's probably well, in part now, because Bud is based in part on your attack speed. So if you have somebody doing a E100 damage, but it's every 5 seconds, Bud treats that in a very specific way with its formula and in figuring out, what your Bud is. Like if the hit is E100, but it's every 5 seconds, then that creates a situation where you're looking at, well, let's say 5 E100, then your Bud is 1 E100, right? Like that's how it works. The hit is divided by the attack speed. So if you're doing the same hit and you can actually reduce the attack speed number, your Bud goes up. By some. It's not a huge deal, but it will go up. Generally speaking, you want just more flat damage. Just more flat damage. It just depends on what you're trying to do. Having fast attackers can help you get through regular segmented health bosses, so the ones where you just need 1 damage to remove. And, if you've got both speed and power, you can get through armored bosses faster. But so there are some situations where it's nice to get through things a little faster, but it doesn't necessarily spike your damage, like spike your Bud for... because it doesn't change your base damage, it's only going to change your Bud, so it doesn't really change your Bud as significantly as you might want it to. And yes, there isn't a cap on attack speed, and it's the animation. It's basically the animation speed of the champion's attack. I think the fastest one I've seen is just watching Artemis just bounce like this, and it's just, you can't even really track his movement. You just see him appear and disappear into his slot in the formation and just moving back and forth. You can't necessarily track the full movement because he'll get going so fast when his ultimate's up, but it still isn't just it doesn't just scale forever. It stops ultimately at how fast they can animate that attack motion. When would I use Birdsong? When I have to. I mean, Birdsong's a fast attacker and a multi-attacker, so that's nice. She's also a DPS or a support, and her specializations support that. So just whenever, if I'm in a situation where my best either sub-buffer is going to be Birdsong because I'm limited due to a variant, I'm going to use Birdsong. Otherwise, if she is going to be my best DPS option in that situation, I'm going to use Birdsong. I mean, that's the kind of the flat rule for most DPS champions, is use them when they're the best option. There's just a lot of DPS champions in this game and a lot of support champions in this game, and because you're limited with how many you can bring along with you at any given time, you have to constantly figure out who your best options are at any given time. Yeah, that was that one. At higher gear levels, does Xander become a speed champion? If you were to... So Xander technically is a speed champion. He has a speed effect. However, primarily the usage for speed in this game by most people is to get you from 1 to wherever your wall is as quick as possible, or just from 1 to wherever your gem farm is resetting. And that's based off instantly killing things with click damage. Xander has no place in that specific speed meta. and never will until they change the way his speed effect works. Because Xander's speed effect requires Xander to attack a target and miss it, and then have someone else kill it to grant you extra credit. So this it is something that you could potentially use after you've stopped click killing things and are killing things with regular attacks, but only if the only one killing things with regular attacks is your DPS champion. And then it's a % chance, so you would have to item level Xander up to the point where it's 100%, which requires a significant item level investment in Xander. And then it's still only happening when Xander attacks, misses, and then someone kills it. So once or twice, maybe 3 times per level, you're getting extra credit, and that's not really the very good speed mechanic, even when it's fully capped out. This is why we don't really talk about Xander as a speed champion, because it doesn't fit the current speed meta, and even if you are using it as a speed effect, it's not super great. It's not super great. Last question. Is the only way to gear champs that are out of events to manually open time gates? That's one option. The other option is to open patron chests for the patrons that they qualify for. Those are the 2 methods when you can't access them in an event: time gates and patron chests. And that's for epic hunting, because electrums are going to drop you gear up till blues for everywhere. Okay, I'll do one last question, but we got to go. It's time. I saw someone asking for evergreen speed champs, and the reply was Minsk. Do you agree? No. Minsk will occasionally spawn an extra enemy. And so again, it's kind of worse than Xander, because it's only every now and then. It's like a 5% chance. It's a very low chance. And giving you 1 more kill on a level every now and then is, sure, in the long run it might speed you up, but it's not really significant. So yep, that's it. All right, we're going to go out. I believe the other song queued up is for Elliewick, because again, she does have that. She does have health reduction potentially if you get the right cards. So she does qualify kind of for the click debuff meta. Next week, I don't even know. I don't remember what our topic is for next week, folks. So you're just going to have to check the schedule when they post it. Streams should start up back again, new streams on Tuesday, I hope. So I will see you all then. Have a good weekend. Stay safe. Take care of each other. Bye, everyone.
She's the greatest part in the multiverse. It all started with a car, with the flip of a redstone morning mist. It really wasn't hard. 'Twas a lucky draw, could have been real wrong. And then she doubled down. But the moon was kind, and from her own mind, she became the best around. She drew a card and took a chance. Turn it back, time to revenue, cause she's been and gone. Feywild courts were so impressed. They gifted her